Welcome in to another Key of David podcast. I am joined by my two co-hosts, Trevor Keys and David the Lion Douglas, and I am super excited about today's guest. And it reminds me of the first time we did this podcast. And just so you know, before we recorded our very first podcast, we didn't have a name of our podcast. And so 15 minutes before our guest was coming on, we're like, what are we going to call this podcast? And we said the Key of David. That's what we're going to call it. And then our guest pops on and it's Philip Cloudpiler Landis, and we got him with us again today. Philip Cloudpiler, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks again for coming on. You have been by far and away one of our most popular guests. There's so many people. Your name is floating around in so many circles. I hear the name Cloudpiler and see the name Cloudpiler in a number of different comments, and so you've turned into kind of a big deal over the last couple of months, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. So today, what we wanted to do is with all of the comments that people have had, we want to go through, we've reviewed those comments, we pulled those comments out, and we just want to have a discussion about some of the questions that they've asked. And Trevor, if you wouldn't mind kind of leading this discussion about the comments, and we'll kind of go from there. But let's kick it off and let's jump right into the show.
All
Trevor.
right. Okay. So first off, I want to kick it off. There's an account on social media that popped up, and I don't know if it was after or before we did the video, but I want to show this first and get Cloudpiler's feedback of it. Tell us how accurate this is, and then we'll get into a little more. Let me share my screen. I'm hearing still a little feedback. I don't know if you guys are. Hopefully, it'll fix. And if you're watching this, guys, hopefully we can get this buffered out. Okay. Tell me if you can see my screen. Okay. Yes.
We got it.
All right. Here we go.
In the early 2000s, Phil Cloudpiler Landis, an elder with the Sahaptin natives, embarked on a remarkable journey. He, along with three elder Sahaptin leaders, was guided to a mysterious cave nestled in the foothills of the Wasatch Mountains in Utah. Inside this hidden cave, they discovered burlap bags sealed with tree sap containing records.
What is that?
Small metal plates less than 2 inches in size, numbered over 20 bags in total. Alongside the plates lay a large circular crystal about the size of a cantaloupe, with a specially carved opening designed to insert the plates. Astonishingly, when the plates were viewed through this crystal, their inscriptions were magnified, making them much easier to read. This extraordinary find came to be known as the Book of the Nemenhah, an invaluable piece of history preserved in the heart of the Wasatch Mountains.
What is this?
I'm telling you, dude.
Some AI generated thing. This is
crazy.
Yeah,
somebody just created an account, and based on discussions that we've had with, we're not sure. This kind of stuff is circulating all over social media, which is, I mean, it's cool. Whether it's perfectly accurate or not, who knows? But they're trying to get that message out there.
It's a lot prettier than what happened. It's a lot better scenery, and the two elders in the Jeep. That's kind of cute. We were, in a station wagon, and it was snowing, and they about killed me. But that's that's just weird. It's just weird.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool what AI can do, though.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, you're in the pop culture now. There's nothing you can do about it, my man.
I mean, where would they have gotten a picture of me standing in front of my PhD and certificates on the wall? And
they had to have just pulled it offline.
Just Google.
Just Google.
That's just crazy. That's crazy.
That's awesome. So yeah, we want to talk about that. We want to talk about what happened. Like the historical record, right? And that's the first thing I'm going to jump into is, we highlighted the first video. You talked about it a little bit, but some of the questions that people were asking is where did this happen? We know it's in San Pete Valley, right? Somewhere near Manti. I think somebody picked up that you said something like Indianola or something like that. Is that give
No,
us
we
some
lived.
insight?
Now when we first moved to San Pete County, we lived over in Indianola, but that's not where this is. How do I describe where it is?
Pete's Mountain. You said Pete's Mountain or something like
Pete's Mountain can be accessed through Pete's Canyon Road, which I think is now a private. Well, they may both be private roads. And then the other way to get up into that area is going up Wales Canyon, or what they call Wells. It's Wales, and you go up to the end of the road and you just keep on going, and it's a crazy road. And it's a good. My voice is doing weird things. It's ragweed season, but it's a crazy drive, even in a 4-wheel drive. And we were by no means in a 4-wheel drive, and you never go up there in the wintertime because you'll die. And we went up there in the wintertime in an old station wagon. But it's the area, if you want to go up there and hike and try and find the air vents, and the whole area between the Wales Canyon Road and the Pete's Canyon Road is the actual section of the mountain where these caverns are. So if you're a spelunker, go up there and find them.
Are there like multiple air vents? Is that like a common thing up in those areas?
I have no idea, but if I made a complex like that, I would have more than one air vent. Yes. It would be stupid not to have more than one air vent. What what if one caved in on you and you didn't have air?
Right. So I don't know if you have seen our videos. We went to Manti 2 weeks ago, and prior we had on Terry Carter, who has done a lot of investigative reporting on Brewer's Cave and got really close to the family. And are you familiar with the Brewer's Cave? You lived in that area.
Yeah. I mean, who isn't? Anybody
Right.
who's lived in the area knows about Brewer's Cave. They don't know where
Yeah.
it is. And a lot of people have tried to find it, but you can hardly live in that area and not hear about Brewer's Cave.
So we went there 2 weeks ago, and we went to 2 locations that were like supposed potential Brewer's Cave. Did some digging, but what shocked me about it was we were just like 2 hills behind the Manti Temple. There are caves everywhere. They're not like this massive like hole. It's like a little rock outcrop, and then there's like a little teeny just area that you can like crawl inside. And our boy David crawled inside and went back and filmed it. It was pretty brave of him.
Yeah,
But
that is.
But it just made me think like there's caves everywhere. Like they're everywhere down there.
Yeah, it's a fun area. It's a fun area to get lost in. It's a fun area to lose children in. It's kind of crazy.
Can you just for our viewers, if they haven't watched the first video, and listen, if you haven't watched Cloud Piler's first videos, go and watch Cloud Piler's first videos. But for those of you who haven't, and let me just kind of reintroduce some things. Cloud Piler was a part of a team that translated an ancient record known as the Nemenhah record. And for those who haven't seen the first video, Cloud Piler, would you mind just almost retelling that story again? It's such a cool story. I want to hear it again. Of getting picked up, and you talk about the station wagon, but maybe explain too what that was like going down in that cave and kind of what you saw.
Well, the story's kind of a scary one, really. We had a knock on the door, and it was winter. We had probably 2.5 feet of snow where we were, and we're down in the valley. Again, forgive my voice. It's going out on me. I'm allergic to ragweed, and this is the beginning of our ragweed season, so you just get to live with it. Anyway, we get this knock on the door, and there were 3 men. One of them I knew. Well, 2 of them I knew. One of them I knew very, very well. The other I knew because I'd been in a sweat lodge with him a couple of times up at Fort Hall Reservation. The other one I only knew of, and I knew that he was never sober, and he was the driver of the station
Oh,
wagon,
no.
and that was why it was a scary thing. And they said, see, what had happened was I had been telling some stories, a story of a great fish, a family's trek, or a group of people's trek, voyage, or up the Colorado River through the great canyons, the Grand Canyon, and I was telling the story of a great fish that had saved their life, and that's an interesting story. But because I was telling the story of this, it's a very old, desperate story. This friend of mine that I had not seen for a long, long time, hadn't seen him since the early '80s, and he heard tell just through the grapevine that I was telling the story of the great fish, and because of that, they came up and they said, there's a carving on the wall in a cave that has this story. We think it's about you, and we think it's probably about your family, because it's the same story. And we want you to go, we want to take you up there, and we want you to show you the place and see if it is. And I said,
Amazing.
I said, no, because there was 2.5 feet of snow on the ground, and they weren't telling me where I was going. But, I was curious, and so we went, and they put a bag over my head. At that point, I thought I was just being kidnapped and taken out in the middle of the desert to be mugged or something. No, there was nothing to mug.
Yeah, sounds like the cartel.
Doesn't sound good, because the one was, Cesar was my old friend. I met him. He was from Guatemala. And then Two Feathers, his wasn't Two Feathers, it was Late Hawkwing, Four Feathers Late Hawkwing. He was a Shoshone that I knew. And then, the driver was a Benali from the Navajo tribe. And I hadn't spoken to these guys. I'd only spoken to the one probably 3 years earlier than that, the Shoshone. But Cesar I hadn't spoken to for, long, long time. But anyway, we said go. So what do? You go, right? And they blindfolded, put a bag over my head, and I could tell that this guy was having a hard time. And even on the paved road, he was having a hard time because he wasn't sober. When he got off the paved road onto obviously the dirt road, there's lots of them out there, because they're simply not allowed. And he was just all over the place. And then you could tell you were going around corners, and you were skidding, and you were going uphill, and your ears pop, you're going up, you're rising in elevation. And I had no idea. We got to the top of the hill. He actually made it to the top of the mountain, to where it levels off to the plateau up there. And they figured it was good enough to take the bag off my head, and blindfolded. And I could see the lights of the cities of the valley, so I knew exactly where I was. We had been camping up there and rock hounding, and it was one of our favorite places to go picnic. So I said, oh, look, there's Fountain Green. Look, there's Moroni, and there's,
So you're saying it was light enough for you?
Yeah, it was dark. I could see the lights of the towns, and you can triangulate exactly where you are when you have 2 or 3 towns, right? So I knew where it was. And I told them so, and they were a little upset because, why blindfold you if you know where you're going? But I think it was probably a good thing, because I would have demanded that they stop. I would have been too frightened by the way the guy was driving, But anyway, they took me to where they had set up a tripod, and it just looked like a tripod sitting out there in the snow. And when we trudged over to it and got closer to it, by golly, there was a hole in the ground. And they said, you're going to go down in there. And I said, the heck I am. And but they convinced me. They threw some of these, one of the chemical camping lights, and they threw them down there. So I had light. They had the ropes all set up, and they lowered me down. I went down a ways, and I had to go sideways along a kind of a ledge, and it wasn't dangerous. It wasn't a skinny ledge. There was plenty of room. We went down a little further, and when I got down into it, I discovered that I grabbed the lights, threw them on down there. I discovered that I was in a hallway, a corridor that was wide. You could drive your car in there, and
Whoa.
it was long. You could park a truck in there, or a couple of trucks in there. It was a lot of space. And off to the sides were openings, doorways that were carved doorways. They were not just holes. These were stone carved pillars on the side of the doorway with a lintel, and on either corner of the lintel were carvings. And on the left side, when I looked up, was obviously the story of the great fish. This is what they were talking about. And so then I went into the room, and that's where it all started. The room was also large, and there was a walkway down through the center, and to my right and to my left, the whole room was stacked from floor to ceiling with not burlap bags like the EI image, the cute little image there, and there was nothing spilled on the floor or anything like that, but they were squarish, big squarish blobs. They didn't look like boxes, but they were covered in cedar bark and pitch, and it looked pretty thick to me, but they were just stacked on top of each other from the floor to the ceiling. At the other end of the room was a table and a chair, and on the table, one of these things had been broken open, and you could see that there was a small stone box about that big, square stone box with a lid.
So let me interrupt you really quick, because there's a few questions that people have asked up to this point. The table and chairs, were they something that was there originally, or had the other people brought in those table and chairs?
They were carved stone. They had been there forever. Yeah, it was actually a table, not a chair, but a kind of a short bench. A bench had no back on it. It was like a bench for one person. I guess you'd call it a stool, wouldn't you? That would be a stool, on a squarish stool. They were the same stone that the walls were carved. I mean, that granite mountain stone was there.
So can you see this right here? This is one of the Brewer Cave pictures of these stone boxes. Was this a similar type setup?
Very similar. There was a lot more of the casing material, the bark and the sap, but that's very similar. It looks a little small. Can't really tell.
There's a hand right here.
And yeah, the ones that I saw were about double that size, and they had multiple plates in them, like a little filing system. But somebody had broken one open. There was also a little tool, and by that time I was not by myself. This is where it gets a little bit mystical, and people think I should be taking strong medications for my psychosis, but I was instructed to take this tweezer-like tool, and that's what you were supposed to pull the plate out of the box with. Now, the plates that I saw were kind of the size of maybe an oversized postage stamp, and you couldn't see any writings at all on the plate. It was just a little gold-colored plate. Well, maybe yellowish, not really gold-colored. It was obviously an alloy, and probably junk alloy at that. But you pulled it out of the box, and there was nothing like that. Yeah, I see what you're putting up there. About the right size, but on these plates, got a bug in front of my face. The writings on these plates were so small you couldn't see them with the naked eye. You had to. Well, you could see that something was there, but you had to magnify them. And there was a device there. It was actually a crystal skull. It was not a sphere with a slot or anything like that. It was actually a beautifully carved, anatomically correct, human-size skull made of clear crystal. And
like Indiana Jones, Indiana Jones style.
It's very common to see these in Central America. I mean, you have whole stores that do nothing more than sell these objects or facsimiles of the skulls that have been formed or that have been found in the ruins. Tulane University Museum down in Mexico City has a beautiful collection of them, and I'd seen them before. This one was very anatomically correct. And that struck me because most of the ceremonial skulls are not anatomically correct. They're close, but especially in the mouth, they don't do the teeth anatomically correct. I was really
That
impressed with how close
just
that
so you
was.
know, I just sneezed. So whatever he's saying is absolutely true. The Hindus believe when somebody is talking about
That's
something
true.
important
That's
and
right.
somebody sneezes. So this is true what he's saying right now.
Must be true. Must be true. So the idea was that you took the little device. I can't really call them tweezer. They were more like pliers. You picked it up from the tab on the corner and you inserted it into the slot. And if you took one of those little chemical lights that I had, just like that, only there was a slot in the mouth. You took one of those chemical lights and you shined it to the side and you looked straight down into the skull. It magnified the plate and you could see the writing. That's how it worked. And that's where it all started. Now, what was important to me is that when I was months before, when I was cooling my jets up in North Idaho Correctional Institution, which is a prison boot camp, that is how I received the first book that I was able to translate, participate in. That was Hagotl, and the book that was out and open on the table was Hagotl. And I had seen all of this before. But, I had seen it all in vision. I thought that it was...
In a vision state. So you had seen all of this before in a vision state.
You see things in vision state, and you know that your brain is making up most of it. Just like when you're driving down the freeway, you're not actually seeing those trees and those telephone poles go by. Your brain is constructing that to make it possible for you to see them. You're not, unless you look over at them, you don't actually see those. That's how our brain functions. And I figured, most of that was probably a construct of my own mind. This was identical. This environment, everything there was absolutely identical, except that there was an oil lamp in the vision instead of chemical lights. So that's how that happened. That's how it all started.
Amazing. Thank you so much for telling that story. Trevor, do you want to jump into these questions? I just wanted to get that again out there because I just think it's such an intriguing origin story of how the Nemenhah record began.
It's not a story that any of us tell very often because, none of us look good in tar and feathers.
Yeah. You know what?
The internet from my little cabin here.
Well, you know what though? We believe as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which us three are, we believe in a guy who had a guy named Moroni visiting him and showing him golden plates buried in a hill we call Cumorah. So we already believe in these kinds of things. And so it shouldn't be something new to us like, oh, wow, that's a bunch of baloney. We already believe in stuff like this. Stuff like this is what our church was founded on. And so we believe that these kinds of things can happen. And who says it can't happen to anybody on the planet, including Cloud Piler? Okay, Trevor.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. I would have called it baloney. I would have been one of those guys who called it baloney. You're full of it. That can't happen. That's not the way it happens. I was one of those guys for years and years and years.
Yeah, my take on it was, Shane had introduced me to this book, and when I first got it and I was reading it, I'm like, this is so good. Somebody did this on ChatGPT, and I was just 100% positive that someone, right? Like I'm like, this is it for sure. And then I kept reading it more and more, and I'm just like, this is incredible. I got to a couple of the stories, and I'm like, wait, this isn't ChatGPT. There's something to this. This is like, there's depth to this. There's truth inside of this. And then Shane, connected this interview and we got on this. But prior to that, I had shared it with like 5 or 6 of my good friends. I'm like, you have to read this. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, help me try to construct what's going on. And everybody's question was, where did this come from? Who translated it? And I was like, I have absolutely no idea. And then finally, Shane, we got on, we did this video, and I heard this story. And just like you, I was like, crystal skulls, no way. Like this is so fantastical. Well, the thing that shocked me was when we put this video up, and my friends who had read the book and they were really like pushback, same thing, Chat GPT, I don't know what this is. They saw the crystal skull thing and the translation thing. And some of them, even my brother-in-law was like, that makes a lot more sense to me. I'm going to read this book now. And I was like, wait, what? It makes more sense to you?
Yeah,
Hearing
that's
this
the weird part to me.
I agree. Totally agree. But like Shane said, if you're brought up in the church and you're hearing about Angel Moroni appearing in a portal, into a room and then, turning into a salamander and hidden plates and having them being taken away. I mean, these are fantastical stories. We all believe them. And so one of the questions that people are asking is, when exactly did this occur? 1999, 2000? When was this?
I don't know, 2000-ish.
2000-ish. Okay.
Winter 2000, between 2000 2001.
Okay. Post Y2K. So
that was when I got baptized.
All right.
I just come into the church then.
Okay. And then another thing that I'm going to throw up on the screen here is, a lot of people were like, does the church know about this? Like, do people in the church know about this? Do the brethren know about this? And we went on a field trip, as we call it, to the church history library, because what I'm going to pop up here is we discovered that they do indeed know about it. Okay, can you guys see this here?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so catalog of churchjesuschrist.org. You can go in and search for the Nemenhah archives, or you can search for Nemenhah, and it shows, what's that?
Nemenhah.
Nemenhah. Okay, I've been saying it wrong the whole time. It shows that these guys have had it, since probably 2006, copyrighted. And
do you know how they got this?
Well, I gave it to them.
Okay.
I got a question. How did that go?
It went really well when it went well. I mean, I'm a naturopath. I was at the time the Utah. I was president of the Utah Naturopathic Medical Association, as it doesn't exist now, but at the time there were new laws being formed, so we did that. And I was working with Gordon Hinckley with his prostate cancer, along with a colleague of mine from Denver. So I was having conversations probably monthly for a while, and then every 3 months. We had conversations about it, and I gifted him a set. They were small. There was a set of books, 6 books at that time. They were small handbook size. And he had his copy, and we discussed it, and it went well while it went well. Then they asked me to stop translating, and it didn't go well after that.
Why did they ask you to stop translating? Do you know?
Well, they were working on their own. They had their own set, a complete set of the plates themselves, and they were working on their own translation. And they got to a certain point where the Savior is visiting a people called the people of Coriantum, and he accepts the sacrament from a woman. And that just, at that point, I believe they just shut the whole translation down, said, we're not ready for this. We're going to do this some other time. I believe that I was never really told why they stopped their own translation. Why they asked me to stop translating is because they thought I was going to draw a whole bunch of people away from the church into my own religion. That's the immediate knee-jerk reaction to anybody who suggests that there are records and histories and scriptures that are not produced for the LDS people by the prophet and the apostles. And it took him a while to realize that that's not what this was about. This is a family history, and we kept it in the family until it got out.
Now, are you aware, have they furthered any of the translation? Do you know what they've done with the records to this point, or have you pretty much just not had a whole lot of contact with them?
I haven't had contact with the church for over 20 years. So I'm really out of the loop.
Okay.
I get told by my friends we have a lot of people around me who are either LDS or LDS splinter or LDS influenced or RLDS. I mean, after all, we're in Missouri. But my own knowledge of what's going on in the LDS church is very, very thin. I really don't know much.
One of the
Gotcha.
things that really, impressed me was the fact that you've been offline, like you're not out promoting this. We can't even find you we're the first YouTube video I think you've ever done.
Yep.
We can't find you anywhere online. There's hardly anything about you. And, for someone who is trying to start a church with the new record, you're doing a horrible job at
Well, thank you. No,
it.
I have to be honest
but I
with you. I have to be honest with you. The idea that came to I wanted to promote this and teach the kind of healing as a naturopath and a teacher. I wanted to teach the kind of healing that the Nemenhah had because it was part of the practice of their religion anciently. And the new laws that were written made it possible for Native American practitioners to practice their religion without interference. And naturopaths at the time were going through a lot of harassment by the government, not so much anymore. But, there were a lot of reasons. The reason that I went to jail was because I was a naturopath practicing natural medicine. And that's another story altogether. And you can't even find out about it now because it's been expunged. Well, it's been dismissed. It was as if it never happened. It's been completely erased. But that's neither here nor there. When you graduate from college as a naturopath, you're told that you should expect to spend, on the average, about 3 to 6 months in jail over the course of your career. And that happened to
Are
me.
you kidding me?
Literally, it used to literally be in the college, in the Bastyr University college catalog. Literally,
Wow.
when you're deciding whether you're going to be a naturopath, just remember that you're going to spend some time in jail. But my idea was, and I got this from a couple of judges, the new law with regard to the restoration of the practice of Native American religion makes it extremely difficult for the government, whether it be local, state, or federal, to interfere with that practice. The law is now codified in the United States Code, and it just makes it very difficult. And we formed a restoration of the Nemenhah Church, and it was all based on natural medicine and natural healing. It's a big part of the practice of the ancient religion. And that didn't go well. There were very, very few people in that crowd that we introduced the family record to. We were pulling excerpts out as part of the practice of religion, but we were not actually that interested in lots and lots of people, especially Mormons, to get this book. Now, the IRS later decided that we were a money laundering scheme, and they took us to federal court, and they got we washed the floor with them, but that scared all of our membership away because they promised that every single one of them would be audited. Now, we had around 6,000 practitioners and their families, and the vast majority of them were Mormons, and they did not stick. They were so frightened by the power of the IRS that they fled, and they're just kind of wandering back in now. But what my son and I, when my son came of age and the reins pretty much of the organization fell to him, the great council put me in over the religious education and placed him over the management of the church. I just lost you all. Are you still there?
Yeah, we're here. We're here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, they, the people are coming back in, and we changed the whole format. We took it away from natural medicine, and we have focused everything on teaching right directly out of the book. We have, 20 or so students who are learning the ministry. At any given time. We're doing this very, very slowly, and it takes about a year, 8 months to a year, for a person to learn the religion of the ancient Nemenhah and become one of our ministers. So it's a very
So
low key. We never
I've
anticipate
got
ever
a,
it's going to be a large
I've got a,
organization.
I've got a point of just for clarification, because I know just a moment ago you explained that it wasn't for starting or leading Latter-day Saints away and for religion. And I know there's going to be some viewers that are going to be like, wait, didn't he just say that? And so I guess, is there an explanation you have for, how you ended up starting a religion ultimately, or is that what we're looking at? Or is there a different
Well,
definition for this?
the religion was formed because of federal law. It was to
Mm.
satisfy the accoutrements of religion so that practitioners could practice in states that didn't have licensing, that they could practice in safety. Because I didn't want people to go through that anymore, that whole 3 to 6 months, 3 to
Ah.
8 months in prison. So that was suggested, hey, look, this has been restored. Nobody knew it. It happened. Take advantage of it. We formed a corporate religion based on the natural healing practices of an ancient Native American religion. That
You were
I,
giving unto Caesar what was Caesar's.
we call it
I've
what
got
you like. Call it what you
yeah,
like, but that's playing.
I've got a quick question for you. So, could somebody be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, but also be one of your ministers? Could they practice the Nemenhah way, but at the same time be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints all at the same time?
We have we formed ourselves by great council, and we created, the mothers formed a great council, and they created a constitution. And in that constitution, it specifically says that it is not the place of the Nemenhah Church or any Nemenhah to dictate the belief systems of any other person. So it doesn't matter to us what organization you're a member of. It matters to, we found out, to other organizations that you're a member of the Nemenhah, you're a minister of the Nemenhah at the same time as you're an elder in the LDS Church. There were quite a few people who were excommunicated back in the day. That really slowed down and kind of stopped happening. But I was out of contact with the church by that time anyway. But no, nobody in the, it's grounds for excommunication from the Nemenhah if you were to try and dictate the belief system of another person.
Wow. Okay. Perfect. Thank you for answering that.
All right. So here's the next question. And before you answer, I'm going to show that video that I accidentally played. The question is it true that someone delivered similar plates to the LDS Church in 1857 and 1957, and they were told they can't translate them? And then I'm going to show another video really quick here that's going to same account. Here we go. Pop this baby up.
Utah's San Pete Valley and were met by indigenous Americans who had been forewarned in dreams of their arrival and conquest. After converting, some chiefs entrusted Brigham Young with sacred records hidden in the Wasatch Front Hills, believing their prophetic duty was fulfilled. Young, however, told them to keep the records, saying, "We have not wherewith to translate these records." As the indigenous population declined, the records were hidden to protect them from treasure hunters. In 1957, Indian elders asked the LDS Church, led by David O. Mackay, to translate the text, but were told no one could. The elders then undertook the translation using the dialects and a Rosetta Stone, type device from ancient authors. Today, the record is being put forward for the testament of Christ and for the convincing of the Jew and the Gentiles.
All right. So
It's a lovely story, but it's not true. I mean,
it's not true.
What I do know is that there was a group of wisdom keepers in Sanpete County who were, we can't really call them Paiute. I guess they were among the Paiute people. But they were there to safeguard the caves. And when Brigham Young and the Mormons came into the area, they had seen them in visions, and they were beside themselves because they were not from that area. they took turns taking care of those records. And frankly, the people mentioned that the place is so hard to live in that nobody in their right mind would live there anymore. It's a haunted place. So they delivered the records that they were caring for to Brigham Young, with the idea that the visions and the prophecies had come true and they get to go home. No more of this, hanging out, taking turns guarding the entrance to the caves. And Brigham Young said, we don't have what I heard and what I've been told by several sources there from the White River Utes and the Paiute and others in the Goshute, is that Brigham Young said they didn't have a way to translate them. We have the direct quote, I believe, is "We have not wherewith to translate this."
That's what that video said.
They kept them. That video, but the 1950s, was it 1957 or something like that? I don't know where they get that.
Okay.
That is made up, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know anything about that. I know that the records are there, and I know that they were translating again in the early 2000s because I was shown some of the plates. But that was shut down for, I assume, reasons related to what they were finding in the record that they didn't think that their was ready for.
Nothing on David O. McKay then, like
not that he's aware.
I would have expected that to be Marky Peterson and not David O. McKay. So they got the guy wrong. I know that Marky Peterson was one of them that was very, very involved in finding and buying ancient records for the church.
Well, I imagine the Hoffman thing really freaked them out. Like they just needed to be a lot more judicious on anything after that. And this is the time when you came along. This is like right after Hoffman. I mean, 15 years or so.
15, 20 years. Yeah, and you have to admit, the Hoffman fraud was, those were good documents. He did a bang-up job. I mean, that could have deceived just about any expert. That's how good they were.
For all of you interested, I was in prison with Mark Hoffman. I will tell you, he's one of the greatest chess players I've ever seen. And if you have ever seen Under the Banner of Heaven about the Lafferty brothers, he is the gay lover to a Lafferty brother in prison. They share a cell together, just for your information.
You're telling me Hoffman's gay today?
With one of the Lafferty brothers.
All right. Well, there it is. Okay, so this answers one of
information I could have done without.
And how, Shane,
it's never coming out. Thank you.
How have you not ever told me about this Hoffman thing? We're going to do a whole entire episode on Hoffman and that entire thing.
And the truth is, he's genius. He's absolutely genius. He's brilliant.
I'm telling you, that was a really well done document. It was one little slip up is all that they got.
When was the date of that? What date did that happen?
85, mid 80s.
Mid 80s.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay,
and
so
where were you in the mid 80s? You were just kind of getting involved at that point, right? I think that's what you said. You.
Me? In the mid 80s, I was raising my little children up in Washington. I was, moving through the callings of the church. In the mid 80s, I was a bishop, stake mission leader, that kind of stuff.
Got it.
So one of the other questions that's in the same vein here is, and I think we answered this, but is it true that the records were given to the church because your records were inside the cave until 1999? So we're talking a whole complete different set of records. And I guess the question is, are these even same record, right? Like these could be a whole nother series of stories or histories or whatever.
Could be generally the same, but a different family group entirely. We don't know. Have no idea.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And in all likelihood, it was probably a different family line's record, because that's how they did it. Ask the stylus onto a family member, and the family's guarded. They kept their own record. They just shared the same repository.
So then the other two questions in the same line is, have you heard of other records that the LDS Church has in their possession? And do you know of other records that other tribes have? Because I'm sure you've come across other people because of this, vein that you fell into.
Yeah, as far as the LDS Church is concerned, I don't really care. As
Do
far
you
as
know of any?
yeah, but I don't care. Yeah, that's their business. Now, the tribes all have their wisdom keepers, and most of them that haven't had their records destroyed have kept them very, very secret. They will be probably little by little coming into the public view. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm hearing this.
I'd
This.
like to see it happen in my lifetime, but I don't know if it will.
What about this September in Wisconsin?
I'm just a guest. I have really no idea what's going on there, except that Midiga says he's going to read my son and my name into the long count, which is a high honor and a
The
reason to
long
sit.
count.
Yeah, I get to sit in a folding chair in the back and be a fly on the wall, and what a great honor, a great privilege, just to be invited to
So
be
tell
there.
me,
This is the wisdom keepers that are meeting in a great council. Nobody else is invited to that. Just their people. This is their stuff. So you kind of
so
get an idea.
now
Great
that
honor.
now that you've gotten to meet Mitiga and you're getting this great honor, what's your relationship been like now or since getting to meet him on the first podcast?
Well, I've had 3 telephone calls with him. I guess you could call that a relationship. I feel like he's been my brother my whole life.
Wow.
We hit it off. Now, he's a lot younger than me. He's going to be a lot more active and mobile, just like the rest of you guys. You're going to have to wait on me when it's August, okay? It's not the time really to visit Missouri, but you're going to be waiting on the old guy probably quite a lot. But,
Well,
he's
I can
energetic.
I can tell you, I got a personal message from Mitiga, and he said, Shane, I've had several conversations with Cloudpiler. I've gone through the record. He's not making it up. It's true. And his stories, our stories are very comparable, and he's not making anything up. So, I mean, you and him, it's been really cool because I feel like Zion Media, we made these introductions and these connections, and now we're starting to see these things happening. And in my mind, this is part of the gathering that we've been talking about for, I don't know, since the church was created, back in the LDS church was created, about the gathering of Israel. And maybe we're at that time where that gathering is happening, and it makes perfect sense that it would start by those who are descended from Lehi. They begin to gather. So we're excited to just be a small part in making that happen.
So let me jump into some of these other questions. We've got people that very, very new into this, and they're like, Nemenhah, Mentana. What do these words mean? What's the origin? Do they mean anything particularly? I know the answer, but I'd like to have you say it.
The Nemenhah people speak a Sahaptin language, and one of the devices in the Sahaptin language are prefixes and suffixes. The
What does
suffix
Sahaptin mean?
Sahaptin is the name of the language. The Sahaptin language. It's like the English language. Sahaptin
Okay.
is a language group. It's a subset of the Penutian language group that came up out of Central America and found its way up into California and the Pacific Northwest, and then crossed over into Japan and China. It's a Sahaptin language, and when you put ha on the end of a word, it means of the, or all about the. And so Nemen is the name of the people. That's what they call themselves. They either called themselves Nemen or they called themselves Nimi. And they put the northern Nez Perce put the suffix pu on there. So Nimi pu is what they called themselves. Nemen comes from the word, the sacred word for the wolf, which is the totem animal that they used to represent the Holy Ghost. So of the Holy Ghost, we are the people of the Holy Ghost. And that's what they named themselves, because they were a whole bunch of different races that came together, and they did not want to have the same strife that was going on in the land southward, what they called the Wenastitspa. The Wenastitspa, the people were kind of choosing sides and smelling armpits, if you can use a rugby term. And they were setting up hierarchies, and this is one of the reasons that they left in the first place. And they just said, we're not going to be Nephites, we're not going to be Lamanites, we're not going to be Jacobites or any manner-ites. So they made a new term. They said, we're just going to follow the Spirit. We're going to be the people of the Spirit, and that's what we're going to call ourselves. Now, Nemenhah is actually the name of a town that was called the place of salt. And it means salty place. And they had a village there. They had a settlement there. Actually, they had what they called a city there. And it's very interesting, because just south of there is where Redmond Salt mines some of the best salt in the world. And one of the reasons that the caves are really good for storing metal objects and is because they're tremendously dry, because the salt content of the area. It's very desiccating. So as a place to keep records that will break down, that will decompose, this would be a very, very good place to keep those records in the valley of Nemenhah, because it's a salty place. And that's what that means. We chose the name Nemenhah Archives to begin with, because the first part of the record all came from there. The second part of the record did not come from there. The people brought those records back to deposit them and to keep them in the Holy Mountain, but they wrote them out here in the East. But anyway, that I hope explains those two things.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. No, that's very good. So, the one thing I really like about the Book of Mormon is how they're giving us chronological markers. The reigns of judges, and you got a pretty good concordance of the timeline in the Book of Mormon. How does the Nemenhah archive do on this? And do we know the time frame? Like, when did it start? When did it end? What's the time frame?
You'd have to say that it began in the bishopric of Tsiblon. You would call him Shiblon, and then extended all the way to 1860s-ish, 1865.
That far?
Yeah, name by name. I have the genealogy of my people all the way back to, well, long before then, because of the Book of Mormon, we have genealogy there.
So Haggoth was in the Book of Alma, right?
Alma 63. So we're maybe 100 years before Christ comes, roughly.
Yeah.
So
Haggoth,
we're talking.
Haggoth is a horrible food in Scotland. The man's name was Hagotl. Okay, that's an opinionated way of saying it, because you can call him what you want. The language is dead, but yeah.
Hagotl.
Hagotl. You can't really.
Oh man,
the L sound is kind of a K and an L in the back of your throat. Hagotl.
Is he related at all to Chaktua?
Who?
He doesn't know that one, Trevor.
All right.
Don't throw the hawk to Adam.
Yeah, I shouldn't have got that. All right. The next one is, how many books are in this? Because I was really blown away at the breadth of this.
See,
like,
now I'm
I
looking
feel like
Trevor. I can't hear him.
Okay,
No,
Yes,
man.
how many books are in it? It's big. Let's just look at the table of contents. And
Are we talking? I feel like it's like 1,100 pages, isn't it?
No, it's not that big.
Oh, okay. I made that up then.
5,800. When we get our index finally finished, it'll be up there. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
I mean,
17, 18,
a
19,
lot.
20. It's a lot. And then there are some of them where like in the Book of Generations, you're looking at many generations, 6 generations of prophets who wrote, but they wrote very little. So they squished it all together. It goes on and on. Yeah, it's called a long count for a reason. It's really a long count of names, and it's a direct line genealogy.
So it's like 20 or 30 different books inside of there.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Wow. And so just so you know, something interesting we found, and I don't know if you're aware of this, and I don't know, Trevor, if you were going to bring this up, but the name Manti, you
Didn't
you can't
understand a
hear
word.
me.
Don't know what's
Trevor,
going
you
on
try.
there.
Man, it must be you. It must be you, Cloud Piler. You need to. Hey, how about you go upon the way and just hear us through the ether?
That would be
You can
easy
hear
if you guys were worthy.
Oh man,
You
I
you
think
get a walk there. I'd love to
Okay.
take you guys a walk on the way.
So Trevor, ask him about that manti that we found carved up in the Manti area, the name Manti. Remember that thing you sent to me? That book you were reading?
Yeah. Are you familiar with the there's a wall in Manti that has been translated. What do we call those? Petroglyph or
Petroglyphs.
petroglyph? I'm forgetting already, Shane. What did it say?
Yeah, it said Manti. It was spelled Mahnti. You sent it to me.
Yeah, Mahantai or something.
Monty.
Have you seen this petroglyph?
I have no idea. I haven't been back there.
Okay.
You know, I'm a homesteader in southwestern Missouri.
Okay, Trev,
So
you're going to
you-
have to take this home
I live
because
in
he
a
can only
county
hear you.
that owns 2 paved roads, and that's by choice. So I haven't really been out there in the world. Something new been translated? That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I think it was a while ago. We'll send it to you, and we'll get David to put it on the image here. But okay, couple questions. Since our audio's shot, I'll see if you can hear me, and if so, I'll ask a few more of these questions.
Yeah, I hear you fine. You're doing great. It's these other 2. You know, I can't even see.
Maybe I could walk upon the way since I'm worthy. Then it's these 2 guys.
You are walking on the way. We are talking over the speed of light.
That's right.
Same
Okay,
energy.
so what happened to the cave? Did they seal it? Do you know like what ended up happening to everything?
Well, the part that I had anything to do with had an entrance that was accessible. And we discovered that another of my cousins was stealing from the records and selling to museums. So I arranged for everything that we could carry out of the cave to be removed, and we set them up in very environmentally controlled facilities over in eastern Utah. And we dynamited the entrances.
Dynamited those babies. Okay.
So you could go, you could dig them out, I'm sure, but we closed them. There was an end to that. We weren't putting up with anything like that.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about the dimensions of the hallway until the archway. Talk to us about the dimensions of the cave itself, height, width, all that kind of stuff.
Big.
60 feet, 120 feet, 300 feet.
The room that I walked into, you could probably park 2 tractor trailer rigs.
Wow.
In the room.
And height?
Height probably 14, 15 feet, maybe. 2 people, 2 men, and some extra.
Okay. Let's see here. This baby was the writings themselves, were they a Semitic type writing, cuneiform? Were they petroglyphic? What was the actual structure?
Looks an awful lot like that. See if I can hold this right. There we go.
Yep.
That's beautiful. That looks like almost Arabic.
Yeah, it's hieroglyphic. And that's stylized. We stylized that. This is, I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up. Maybe it will.
It's picking it up.
Yeah, that looks like, okay.
That has the letters, the vowels, the number system, and it has some hieroglyphics that have to do with the practice of the religion. That's a
So are
temple
you saying
dog.
that was super small also on the plates?
That was carved into the right side of the doorway. And I took all the
Ah,
artistic elements out of it. It was very elaborate, very elaborate. Lots of decorations around it, and you had to find that within the middle of it. And I just kind of made a rubbing. I wasn't given permission, but I did it anyway. And then I took all the artistic filigree out of it and made that very simple drawing, because it's a bit of a Rosetta Stone. There were different ways of writing. They had hieroglyphics, they had purely pictograph or picture writing on the plates, and then there was a very cuneiform like alphabet system as well, all from right to left, and that's written around in a circle. But yeah, it made it easier because the animals that are depicted on that were spelled out on it, and so you got the sense of, if you knew the word, you knew the name of the wolf, for example, Chemine, you then had it written out as they would write Chemine.
Okay. Okay, well, we're down to our last little section here, and it's on way walking. And I know you and David have been doing a few Zooms, and David is just like determined to be able to way walk. Can you explain to everybody again just the fundamentals of way walking? To me, it sounds kind of like meditating, kind of a third eye exercise. But talk a little bit about that.
Well, it wraps around the belief, a portion of the creation story of the Nemenhah, which is not remotely similar to probably anything that you've ever read or well, there are similarities, but you know, there's the Adam and Eve story, and there's the garden story and all that. But to the Nemenhah, it was a valley. It was first man and first woman. And in the first part of their experience together, they lived in a valley that was perfect. They didn't suffer death. They didn't get sick. You know, the age-old story. But when they were introduced into the world, that whole valley was taken up, and the materials that made the valley were used by the peacemaker to create a thing called the way. And the way is actually a physical construct that allows the individual to leave their, you're not really leaving your body. It allows you to expand your consciousness so that the spirit can come in contact with heavenly beings without dissolution, not dissolving your body. It is not the same as astral tripping, astral projection. It requires the Shemine, which is the Holy Ghost. You cannot do it without a partnership with the Holy Ghost. But it does, when you reach the point where you can cross that veil of forgetfulness, it allows you to interact with directly your ancestors, angels, ministering angels, spirits of just men and women made perfect, and heavenly beings, including the peacemaker himself, if it's appropriate. Now, the whole idea there, the whole reason for that is to gain instruction, or to be instructed, so that eventually you can actually be taken to the veil of heaven by the peacemaker and introduced to Elohim and progress in that way. So the walking upon the way is more than just meditation. We use some principles of meditation to teach you how to do it, but the whole idea is it's really the purpose of the temple. The Nemenhah Tuhul Numen is the temple, and the only reason to have the temple is to teach the people to walk upon the way.
Okay, so this this kind of, you know, in a very crude sense, reminds me of, have you seen The Matrix with Neo, where he like is able to go in and receive instruction and that type of stuff?
I've never seen it. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, you need to check out The
what?
Matrix.
When I
No,
come visit you, we're doing a movie night. We're watching Matrix Part 1, me and Cloud Piler. Let's go.
Yes, let's do it.
is it? Well, okay.
It's good. It's definitely good. Okay, so one of the questions that somebody had on way walking is, you described in one of the videos this process where you're almost like, it's almost like a breathing ritual, right? Where you're like, I don't even know how to describe it, but we had a couple people, including my brother-in-law, who have been to some conferences of Joe Dispenza. Very, very popular guy. I don't know if you've ever heard of Joe Dispenza, but he teaches people how to commune with higher beings. And my brother-in-law, he's gone and paid several thousands of dollars to go and do this. And he said, when I was watching that video of Cloud Pilot, he's like, that is very, very similar to how Joe Dispenza teaches people to do.
Wow, I'm in the wrong business. I guess we could probably
Let's
afford
set it.
to put the siding or the paneling on our walls here if I charged for it a lot.
All right. Well, Shane and I are good business guys, so we'll set that up. We'll give Joe Dispenza a run for his money.
Yeah, and I think Joe Dispenza is worth like over $100 million. So buckle in. So
Yeah, he doesn't need any. He doesn't need any. Okay, Shane, that's it. We've hit him.
Okay, awesome. Cloud Pilot, again, I want you to know how much we love you and how grateful we are for you, the work that you've done. The Nemenhah record to me it's incredible. And if you haven't read it, go and buy your own book, get your own copy of it, study it. It will bring you closer to the Savior Jesus Christ, just like the Book of Mormon will bring you closer to the Savior Jesus Christ. And it gives you great context to understanding the Book of Mormon. Trevor and I talked about the Nemenhah record and how reading it along with the Book of Mormon has increased I guess, the fruitfulness of the Book of Mormon. One of the superpowers of the Nemenhah record is it makes the Book of Mormon an even more rich experience. And so if you want a more rich experience in the Book of Mormon, read the Nemenhah record and you will see that correlation there. So again, Cloud Pilot, thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited. For those of you who don't know, I am myself and David the Lion Douglas. We're doing a little trip out there to Missouri, and I'm really excited to meet you in person, give you a big bear hug, and just talk about life and what you've been through and where you've been and the
And
Nemenhah
watch
people.
Matrix, evidently.
Yes, and watch The Matrix 100%. Um, but again, appreciate you coming on. Make sure if you're watching this video, post in the comments. We'll do these things where and hopefully we can have you on and do a Q&A. So if you got questions, post in the comments questions, and maybe we'll do a live Q&A just like we did with Mitiga, and we'll bring Cloud Piler on and we can do it live. You can ask us questions or ask questions live. So thanks again, Cloud Piler, for coming on. For myself, I'm Shane Baldwin. For Trevor Keys and David the Lion Douglas, we will see you guys next time. Hey, make sure like and subscribe.
Hello. Very much like a giant media for to like watch all videos. Very much need to subscribe, like a channel, and share with all your friends. Zion Media is the best. Very, very best.